The vet put down her instruments and looked at the results again. She looked at them several times and the ultrasound confirmed it, but in all her years as a vet, she'd never encountered something like this. She had a million questions, but the only thing she was sure about was that this dog needed immediate attention. Chris and Marissa had traveled to many different animal shelters to find a dog to adopt. They knew that out there was a perfect match for them, but it was difficult. She'd promised Chris that they would only adopt one dog, but when they saw the pregnant dog giving her a mournful look, she knew what she had to do. As soon as she saw them, the dog came closer and began licking their hands. Her belly, swollen with puppies, was huge, and Marissa knew that she deserved a proper, loving home. There was no doubt that this was the dog that she and Chris would adopt, but they had no idea what they were about to learn, and it would change everything. Chris and Marissa would soon discover that being pregnant at a shelter wasn't the only tragic part of the dog's life. The pit bull, named Story, had been owned by someone who ran a backyard breeding business. However, when it became apparent how expensive housing, feeding, and caring for her and her pups would be, they opted to instead drop her at the shelter. Marissa couldn't help but cry as she listened to the tragic story. The couple immediately knew that this dog deserved a proper home and that she should be given all the affection in the world, especially considering her past. It was obvious that the shelter was no place for a dog in her condition. They promptly adopted her in hopes of giving her a better life. However, a trip to the vet would change everything. As if things didn't already seem perfect enough, Chris and Marissa shared a love of pit bulls. They'd rescued several other pit bulls in the past, as they both loved the dog breed. In case you were wondering how many dogs, they currently have no less than 10 pit bulls. You can see 8 of them in this photo. It's important for a dog to have a good bed, but when you have as many dogs as Chris and Marissa do, space becomes a problem. To solve this, Chris built a 7 feet wide and 14-foot long mega bed for the dogs. As he stated in an interview with Today, "At nighttime, all the dogs want to sleep on the bed, and sometimes it becomes too cluttered, and we end up being pushed off the bed or sleeping on the couch. So we built the mega bed." The couple loves the pit bull breed and knows that there's more they can do for them, as pit bulls are sadly misunderstood breed. There are very strict laws regarding owning pit bulls. In fact, they're downright outlawed in some states. The couple naturally had a lot of experience with this breed of dog, but even they weren't ready for what was about to unfold. Marissa's admitted that she's broken up with past partners because they simply didn't understand her obsession with dogs, nor did they support her in it. Chris, however, not only understood and supported her dream, but he actually shared it with her. The couple's shared love not only for each other but also for dogs seemed like a perfect match. Being together only saw their passion for dogs increasing. The couple adores our canine friends, so it might seem strange that they'd think twice. So why did they? Animal shelters worldwide have to deal with more than insufficient resources, however. Naturally, every shelter dreams of being able to care for all the animals they take in, but reality isn't that kind. When Chris and Marissa visited Pibbles and More Animal Rescue, they were stunned by how many pit bulls there were. They had no idea that one such pit bull was about to change their lives forever. Sadly, pit bulls have a terribly unkind reputation. Due to their stocky build and large heads, many consider them more aggressive than in fact they are. This, coupled with the strict laws about owning pit bulls, is one of the reasons why so many end up in shelters. The stigma surrounding these dogs was nothing new to the couple. They knew the truth about these dogs. As a result, they had adopted numerous pit bulls in the past as their means and resources allowed. They'd never seen anything in their own dogs to warrant their bad reputation. They could never have expected what fate had in store. Despite what many believe, studies have found no proof to support the bad reputation. As with any other breed, it all comes down to how the animal was treated. Pit bulls are no more predisposed to being aggressive than, say, a Labrador. However, Story was about to change everything they thought they understood about pit bulls. While filling out the forms to adopt Story, the staff told the couple that she was very close to giving birth. In fact, she was actually overdue already. No one could explain why she hadn't given birth yet, despite how clearly ready she was. It was a complicated situation that no one really understood. Knowing how serious the situation could be, the couple knew that they might be forced into a literal life-or-death choice for the dog and her unborn puppies. It was a big decision, and the couple knew they couldn't rush it. However, there wasn't really any time to do so. The stakes also made it worse. Even though time was of the essence, the couple knew that they had to discuss things for a moment. They couldn't rush in blindly, but they also couldn't stand idly by. While they were discussing things, Story did something that made their decision for them. She quietly walked over to the couple and placed her head on Marissa's knee and looked mournfully at her. As happy as she was to bring Story home, Marissa knew things were very complicated. It not only meant adding one more member to their family, it potentially meant more. As much difficulty as Marissa was having with the situation, news lay around the corner, news that changed things even more. Even though they were aware that keeping Story would mean taking care of an additional 10 dogs, they didn't want the pregnant dog mama to be at the shelter for longer than she needed to be. Marissa wanted to help Story and give her a safe space to deliver the pups. The couple started to talk about it and weighed the pros and cons of bringing home Story. Without a doubt, it was not a practical idea. However, Chris suggested something that made perfect sense for the situation at hand. It sure seemed like their best bet, both for their family and for Story and the pups. He suggested that they would foster Story and her puppies. However, this was only going to be temporary, as the animal rescue team would then look for their forever homes. This was a good idea, since they couldn't afford to keep more pets with their 8 other dogs. The suggestion was a brilliant one, but the problems didn't end there. They still had to find out what was wrong with the pregnancy. What was the reason Story had not yet given birth, even though she was close to bursting? This was the next thing they had to tackle. They needed to give the pregnancy the attention it deserved. This was the first time they'd ever encountered anything like this. There must be some reason Story was unable or unwilling to give birth to the babies. Chris and Marissa had been worrying about it, so they decided to go to the internet and look for a way to address the issue. Did they find anything of relevance there? Unfortunately, they didn't find a lot of reassuring things online. In fact, they came out even more worried about the situation. Well, this is normally what happens when you look for answers online. Chris and Marissa felt even more anxious about the whole thing. Humans have a tendency to underestimate just how intelligent most animals actually are. When Marissa and Chris started to look for answers, they found out why a dog might resist the delivery of her puppies. They even found a source that seemed to perfectly describe what was happening. What did they learn? Research showed that animals often experience a lot of stress and even trauma when they live in rescue shelters. Of course, pregnant dogs are more vulnerable to this. While shelters have the intention of helping animals in need, they get crowded quickly. A crowded place is not the best environment for a pregnant dog. A loving home such as Chris and Marissa's can make a big difference. Chris and Marissa started to read up about the matter some more and realized things could escalate further. There was a possibility that Story would lose her puppies. Not only that, but she might also lose her life. They certainly had no idea how bad things were. Can you believe that that's not all? Marissa found out that pregnant dogs experiencing trauma get so worried about the pups that they choose to refuse to deliver completely. This situation happened since they're under the impression that the babies would be at risk. Chris and Marissa were able to tell that this was a precarious situation. They had to bring the pregnant pooch to the vet as soon as they could. This was important if they wanted to ensure the safety of the babies. They popped back in the car and drove to the nearest vet. The vet conducted an ultrasound scan, but she saw unbelievable results. She shook her head. How could this even be possible? There must have been some kind of mistake, one way or another. However, nothing about the results changed or disappeared. Not the shapes nor the numbers, it was true. What she saw there would change things for the couple and the others involved. Then Marissa picked up on the fact that something wasn't right. What was it now? The veterinarian took a deep breath before she delivered the news. She went into an explanation of the abnormality she found in Story's womb. They'd been expecting to see 6 puppies, but this did not align with the ultrasound results. The vet pointed to the outlines and then counted them for the couple. Chris and Marissa then figured out what was happening. They were now in shock as well. They were told that Story would have 6 puppies, but the ultrasound revealed that that wasn't true. What exactly was going on? The vet didn't expect this either. She tried to count again. After this, she gave it another round. The results were always the same. At last, she figured there was no choice but to tell them what it was. Chris and Marissa had been expecting 6 puppies, but the vet knew this was wrong. The pregnant dog was not carrying 6 puppies, but 12. Yeah, that's twice the number of dogs they were expecting. At any rate, Story had 12 puppies in her womb. How are they going to solve this mess? The lovebirds couldn't believe what they just heard. How could this happen? 6 dogs already sounded like too much, but 12? Clearly, the problem was even more serious than they had originally thought. Was Story going to be okay? Was she going to deliver all 12 of her babies? Let's find out. Even the vet had no idea why Story had yet to give birth to her large litter of puppies. At the very least, the ultrasound showed that her puppies were all fine. What a relief. What was next for them? The vet said that the best thing they could do was head home and get ready for birth. If Story still hadn't given birth after 48 hours, they should return for yet another examination. Chris and Marissa didn't know this at the time, but Story actually had a great reason to wait. You can probably imagine how stressed Chris and Marissa had been at the moment. Story was not only in danger of losing 6 babies, but a dozen babies. They couldn't help but feel anxious about the following 48 hours. Was Story going to be all right if she failed to deliver the pups in that time frame? It's easy to see that this was a dangerous and terrible situation at the same time. However, there seemed to be nothing they could do for Story. The only thing left to do was to make her feel at home. When they went home, Marissa came up with a clever plan. By that point, Chris and Marissa already went through a lot of articles about trauma and stress. They knew how hard things had been for Story. They tried to help her by giving her a very inviting space. Marissa chose a spot in a spare bedroom. She even placed pillows and blankets for the dog. After that, they showed Story her new sanctuary and prayed for the best. Chris and Marissa gave it their all because they wanted to make it just right for the pooch. They even kept track of the room temperature and noise level in there. The couple didn't know that something incredible was going to happen there. The two of them headed off to bed for the night and then went to see how Story was doing upon waking up. They wanted to see if she was feeling better and more comfortable. As Marissa and Chris headed to the room where they left the pit bull, they could hear some curious noises. They hurried and entered the bedroom. They didn't expect to see what they laid their eyes on. They entered the spare bedroom. Much to their delight, they found Story in there with her 12 adorable puppies. She was able to deliver them all while the two of them slept. What an incredible sight it was. Marissa and Chris were reduced to tears by what they saw. Who would have thought Story was finally going to deliver the pups? They were thrilled. Soon enough, they learned just why she waited so long. When dogs give birth to puppies at the shelter, it often becomes stressful for both the mom and babies. Story was somehow aware that the shelter was not a good place for anyone to give birth in an environment like that. This is the reason she decided to wait for someone like Chris and Marissa. Isn't it incredible that Story only had to spend one whole day, even less, with Chris and Marissa to feel comfortable around them? She was so at home that she even delivered her litter of puppies. What made it even more special was the fact that no one understands what's going on. Good job, Story. Story was great when it came to looking after the puppies. Well, what else did you expect from the best dog mother in the entire world? It didn't take long before people started to file adoption cases for the dogs. The couple already knew that they would not get to keep the puppies for a long time. Was Story going to be okay with letting the puppies go? After several weeks, the puppies finally opened their eyes. Marissa and Chris had been enjoying their time they had with the litter of puppies. The babies took over the yard and goofed around with one another. You know what puppies are like. Story was happy to have all her pups with her. Sadly, the time came for them to say goodbye. When Story was taken to a good and secure environment, she was able to let her body do the work and deliver the puppies. This was how she got to welcome the puppies, all 12 of them. However, what was next for her and her babies? Let's find out. It seems like Story knew just what she needed to give birth to her babies. All she wanted was the feeling of protection and security. The foster couple managed to give her these things, which was how she birthed her 12 strong puppies. She sure is one smart dog. It's impressive to hear that they managed to find foster parents willing to adopt the puppies when they were 10 weeks old. Chris and Marissa might have adored the babies, but they simply didn't have the means to keep them. They had to give them up for adoption, sadly. It was a heartbreaking moment, but it was the right thing to do. When they were 10 weeks old, the puppies were brought to their new homes. We're glad to hear that, but what will become of Story? The puppies were all in good hands now, but what about the mother? After risking her life for her children, this wonderful mother deserves only the best. It's not all that surprising to hear that the story went viral when it was posted on Facebook. The inspiring story of Story reached someone who fell in love with her right away. This man contacted Chris and Marissa to schedule an appointment. He wanted to meet this lovely dog and then see from there. What did he have to say? He ended up loving Story even more and decided to take her home with him. Story has at long last made her way to her forever home. She and the rest of the puppies were then taken to their amazing homes. Not only that, but she also got spayed to prevent any more massive pregnancies. Let's hope she never has to go through anything like that ever again. Even though Story gave birth to a large number of puppies, she still remembered to give them the attention they love and deserve. When she was still with them, she was the image of a perfect mom. Aren't you excited to hear such a lovely thing? Chris and Marissa were both happy and proud to see Story accomplish such a big feat. She even cleaned and nursed the puppies while she waited for them to reach a good health status. Sadly, the couple didn't have much more time with them. The 12 pups all went to loving houses they now get to call their forever homes. They're glad this is the case because they'll never run out of love and affection now. Story stayed with Chris and Marissa until each of the puppies were taken. Her maternal instincts are still as bright as can be. If Marissa and Chris failed to take a chance on her, some very terrible things would have happened to her and her babies. We're happy that they took a chance on the incredibly pregnant dog they found in the crowded animal shelter. Otherwise, things would have gotten a much sadder ending. Phew. Even though the story of Story had a happily ever after, there are so many dogs out there who will never get to find a forever home. Shelters typically need plenty of help to take care of animals. If you're unable to foster a dog for some reason, you can do more by checking out your other options. Of course, it's always a good idea to take in a new dog if you can. However, you can opt to donate money or spread the word about the shelter or rescue home. These might sound like little things, but they'll go a long way to help the people who work in the shelters. Marissa and Chris are the founders of a nonprofit organization that looks after elderly and sick dogs. It's called the Mr. Mo Project. The dogs that fall under these categories have a high risk of euthanasia, so the couple wants to look for places that could call their forever homes. The project also takes care of medical and living expenses. The hospice homes, meanwhile, provide care and love. If you can adopt or foster dogs, you should always keep this story in mind. There's no need to fret if you don't think you have enough bed space for all the dogs you want to adopt. Should that ever happen, try to follow in the footsteps of Marissa and Chris. Although the average king bed measures 6.6 feet long, theirs is nearly double that. This is an option you might want to consider. By this point, you should know better than anyone how much Marissa and Chris love dogs. You can even check out the Instagram account for the Mr. Mo Project. On that account, they posted this photo with a caption that read, "Happy Easter and Passover from our doghouse to yours."